They say the eyes of a child never lie, but no one ever looked long enough into Angela's. At just 12, she was the type of girl teachers loved, quiet, focused, always scribbling in her book, chasing a dream she wasn't even old enough to describe. Her mother, Patricia, a Lagos banker, was hardly ever home. Work, meetings, traffic, stress. She was chasing money, while her daughter quietly chased safety. And safety was hard to find in a home with Dennis. Dennis, her jobless stepfather, was the kind of man who wore bitterness like a second skin. Once a local mechanic, he had lost more than just his job. He had lost his sense of purpose. Now he sat at home watching TV, drinking cheap beer, and shouting at the walls. But what no one knew, not even Patricia, was that Dennis had begun to look at Angela differently. Not like a father, not like a man should ever look at a child. And one day, he spoke the words no child should ever hear. "Angela, let's play a little game." Angela froze. The words were innocent enough on the surface, but the way Dennis said them, it made her stomach twist. She clutched her schoolbook tighter and blinked at him from across the sitting room. "What game?" she asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Dennis smiled, a smile that had nothing kind behind it. He patted the couch beside him, the brown leather cracked and faded like the man himself. "Come, I'll show you," he said. Angela didn't move. Her instincts screamed. Something wasn't right. But Dennis stood and walked toward her, and when he took her by the wrist, she didn't resist. Not because she trusted him, but because she didn't know what else to do. She was 12, and he was supposed to be her father. He led her to his room, the room he shared with her mother, and locked the door behind them. That night, Angela didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her textbook unopened beside her, and her childhood shattered on the floor. She couldn't tell her mother. Her mother was always tired, always late, always busy. Who would believe her? And so, the game began. One she never agreed to play, and each chapter of her life would get darker. Unless someone noticed. At school, Angela wore a smile like a shield. Her classmates laughed and chattered about cartoons and crushes, but Angela stayed quiet. Her eyes told a different story, one her lips never dared speak. Her teacher, Miss Edith, noticed the change. Angela, once eager to answer questions, now seemed distracted, her mind somewhere far away. "Angela, are you okay?" Miss Edith asked one afternoon after class. Angela nodded quickly. "Yes, Ma." But Miss Edith wasn't convinced. Still, without proof, all she could do was watch. At home, Dennis played the same sick game, always choosing times when Patricia was away or asleep. He warned Angela, "If you ever tell anyone, your mother will hate you. She'll send you away. You'll destroy this family." Angela believed him, because her mother already seemed distant, like her work was more important than anything else, even her daughter. And so Angela kept smiling in public and dying in private. Late one night, after another painful silence, Angela wrote a letter to no one. Just words on a piece of paper, soaked in quiet tears. "Dear God, please take me away. I didn't do anything wrong. I just want to go back to being happy. I just want to go back to being a little girl." She folded the letter and slipped it under her pillow, hoping somehow, some way, God would read it. That same night, Patricia came home later than usual, exhausted, overworked. She peeked into Angela's room, saw her sleeping, and shut the door. She didn't see the tear-stained face. She didn't see the note. She didn't see the danger growing under her own roof. Dennis, however, was wide awake, sitting in the living room, watching a football match. But his mind wasn't on the game. His eyes kept drifting toward Angela's door. And that door no longer protected her. On a Wednesday afternoon, while Angela was alone with Dennis again, a faint sound escaped the flat, barely louder than a whisper, but just loud enough to stir attention. Their neighbor, Auntie Beatrice, paused while hanging laundry. She had always felt something wasn't right in that household. Dennis had too much time and Angela too little joy. She pressed her ear to the thin wall that separated their homes. A muffled voice, a girl's cry, a harsh whisper. Quiet. Her heart skipped. Later that evening, she saw Angela outside, standing beside the trash bin, staring into space like someone lost in her own skin. Beatrice walked over. "Angela, are you okay?" Angela nodded too quickly. "I'm fine, Ma." But Beatrice wasn't convinced. She knew that look. She'd seen it before, in her own past, in her cousin's daughter, in the silence of girls forced to grow up too soon. She made up her mind. She would watch closely. Very closely. Patricia sat behind her desk at the bank balancing transactions worth millions, advising clients on investments, but not once had she noticed the investments in her own home crumbling. When she got home that night, Angela tried to speak. "Mummy." Patricia raised her hand. "Please, I've had a long day. Let me rest." Angela's words never comes out from her lips. Patricia noticed Dennis smiling from the couch. "You've been home all day again?" she snapped. Dennis laughed. "I'm working on something, you'll see." She didn't press further. She was too tired. Always too tired. That night, she slept deeply. Dennis didn't. Angela, in the darkness of her room, prayed silently. "Let someone see me. Let someone save me." And outside her window, Auntie Beatrice sat with her phone in hand, waiting for a sign. She was no longer just a neighbor. She was a witness. Auntie Beatrice knew one thing. Silence is not the best. She had heard enough, seen enough, felt enough. She contacted a friend, Ngozi, who worked with a women's rights group in Lagos. "I think a young girl next door is in an unsafe environment, by her stepfather. She's always quiet, and I've heard things." Ngozi responded quickly. "We'll handle it discreetly, we just need more proof." Beatrice nodded. She would get it. Whatever it took. Meanwhile, Patricia remained oblivious, thinking the greatest danger in her life was the Lagos traffic. She didn't know a greater tragedy lived in her own bedroom. That weekend, Beatrice slipped a small audio recorder through the shared wall crack near the living room. She prayed silently. Let the truth come out. And that Sunday, it did. She captured a conversation. A threat. A whimper. It was all there. The truth was no longer a secret. And the clock had begun to tick. Beatrice didn't sleep that night. The recording on her phone haunted her. Dennis's voice, cold and threatening. Angela's broken cries. It was all real. The next morning, Beatrice called Ngozi. Within hours, the organization made contact with Lagos Family Services. Discreet arrangements were made, but it couldn't be rushed. One wrong step, and Dennis might escape punishment, or worse, silence Angela forever. That afternoon, Patricia came home to find Angela curled up on the couch. "You didn't even eat?" she asked. Angela shook her head. "I wasn't hungry." Patricia sighed. "Angela, you've changed. Is everything okay?" Angela looked up, eyes pleading. But just as the words formed, Dennis entered the room, and Angela's lips sealed again. Beatrice, watching from her window, whispered, "Soon, my dear. Just hold on. Your nightmare is almost over." Miss Edith could no longer ignore the signs. Angela's grades were dropping. Her smiles were mechanical. Her responses rehearsed. She scheduled a private meeting with the school counselor, Mrs. Clara. "Something's wrong with that girl. I don't have proof, but I feel it." Mrs. Clara nodded. "We've had suspicions, but she never talks." "I want us to try again," Miss Edith said. The next day, they called Angela into the office. Gently, kindly. "Angela," Mrs. Clara began softly, "we're not here to punish you. We're here to listen. Is there something you'd like to tell us?" Angela looked up at them. For a moment, her lips parted. Her heart screamed to speak, but fear was louder. She shook her head. "No, Ma. I'm okay." They exchanged glances, not convinced, not ready to give up. And outside the school gates, Auntie Beatrice stood waiting in silence. She had a plan, and it was already in motion. It happened on a Wednesday evening. Angela had just returned from school. Patricia was still at work. Dennis was in the living room drinking beer, waiting. He called out, "Angela, come and help me with something." Angela froze. Her stomach twisted. But what none of them knew was that Auntie Beatrice was already outside, with 2 members from the women's group and a plainclothes police officer watching from across the road. Beatrice had alerted them earlier. Today, he'll try again. She wasn't wrong. As Dennis reached for Angela inside the room, the door burst open. "Freeze!" Dennis spun around. 2 officers charged in, followed by Beatrice and Ngozi. Angela screamed, tears bursting from her eyes. Beatrice ran to her, wrapping her in a warm, trembling hug. "You're safe now," she whispered. "He'll never touch you again." And for the first time in weeks, Angela cried freely, not in fear, but in relief. Dennis sat in the interrogation room, his arms folded, sweat clinging to his forehead. He was no longer arrogant. The audio recordings, the statements from Beatrice, the bruises, the broken spirit of a girl too young to carry such pain. The evidence was undeniable. Yet, Dennis still tried to lie. "She's making it up. She hates me." Until the officers played the recording out loud, his voice clear as day. "If you tell anyone, your mother will send you away." He slumped in silence. Meanwhile, Angela sat beside Beatrice at the child protection unit. Her eyes stared at the floor, but there was a calmness now, a seed of hope. Patricia arrived in tears. She had been called from work. She collapsed to her knees when she saw her daughter. "Angela, I didn't know. I didn't know." Angela looked at her. "You never saw me." The days after Dennis's arrest were a blur. Patricia couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't forgive herself. She replayed every missed signal, every late night, every time she brushed Angela off. She stood before the child protection officer, her voice shaking. "I failed her." "Yes, you did," the woman replied plainly, "but it's not too late to start again, if you're ready." Patricia nodded. "Whatever it takes. I want to be her mother again." Angela, however, wasn't ready to forgive. She remained silent in her presence, her eyes full of caution, not trust. Patricia had to earn back her place, not as a banker, but as a mother. And it would take more than tears. It would take healing. Angela began therapy at a safe center for children mistreatment. Her counselor, Dr. Lydia, was patient, gentle, firm. "It wasn't your fault, Angela." Angela blinked. "But I didn't stop him. You were a child. He was the adult. He knew better. You were never to blame." For the first time, someone said what Angela didn't know she needed to hear. Each session helped her peel back the layers: fear, shame, confusion. At home, Patricia left work earlier now. She cooked. She read. She waited. And sometimes just sat beside Angela in silence. Slowly, Angela began to let her in. One day, she handed Patricia her old letter. "Dear God, please take me away." Patricia wept. "I'll never let anyone hurt you again." And for once, Angela believed her. The courtroom was silent as Dennis was led in. He looked nothing like the man who once ruled their house with fear. He was thinner, defeated. Angela didn't attend the trial, but Patricia did. She needed to. Testimonies from Beatrice, recordings, psychological reports, and the expert witness from the child center sealed his fate. The judge looked at Dennis with cold eyes. "You mismanaged your position as a father. You scarred a child. This court finds you guilty." Dennis was sentenced to 25 years imprisonment. Outside, Patricia called Angela from the court. "He's gone," she whispered. "He can never hurt you again." Angela was silent for a while. Then she said, "Okay." It was a beginning. Angela and Patricia moved out of the apartment. Too many memories, too many shadows. They relocated to a quiet part of town, closer to Angela's school and Beatrice, who had now become family. Angela started a new term. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were less frequent. In class, she began to raise her hand again. Her answers returned. Her smile, though smaller, was real. At home, Patricia made dinner every evening and listened. Just listened. One night, Angela whispered, "Mummy, I missed you." Patricia smiled through tears. "I missed you too, baby." Angela took an old shoebox from under her bed. Inside were notes, pages she had written in the dark, letters to God, to herself, to her future. She handed them to Dr. Lydia. Dr. Lydia read them carefully. "Angela, these are powerful. Have you ever thought of turning them into a book?" Angela's eyes widened. "A book?" "Yes. Your story could save another child." Angela looked down. The thought of her pain becoming purpose, it was scary, but also beautiful. Maybe one day. Maybe soon. With support from Dr. Lydia and Beatrice, Angela joined a youth advocacy program for girls. At 14, she stood in front of a group of students and said, "My name is Angela." And I survived. There was silence, then applause, then tears. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a voice, a light, a warrior. Patricia started her own healing too. She attended support groups for working mothers, learned to balance ambition and motherhood. She spoke publicly about blind parenting, about trusting instincts, about never being too busy to notice your child. Angela sometimes sat beside her, quiet, strong. Their bond was no longer broken. It was rebuilt, not overnight, but brick by brick. On her 15th birthday, Angela received a letter. It was from a girl named Miriam in Kaduna. She had heard Angela's story on a youth radio program. The letter read, "I never told anyone my stepfather touched me too, but when I heard your story, I told my teacher. Now I'm safe. Thank you, Angela." Angela clutched the letter to her chest. She cried, not in pain but in power. Her voice had saved someone else. The cycle had been broken. Angela's story spread, first through whispers, then through schools, then through a published memoir titled, She Called It a Game. It became part of curriculum discussions. A dramatic modern African folktale, real, raw, and redemptive. Angela didn't want fame. She wanted awareness. She wanted justice for those still unheard. And as the sun set one Lagos evening, Angela looked out the window and whispered, "I survived. But more importantly, I'm living." In every silent child may lie a broken story. Open your eyes. Listen. Speak out. Protect. Heal. Because monsters don't hide in the dark. They hide in plain sight. And silence only feeds them. Dear viewers, we will love to hear your thoughts from this dramatic tale. Another emotional and powerful story is coming your way in a few days. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this story with a friend. Every share keeps African storytelling alive. Thank you for watching.